Can somebody help me out here? Are the Dodgers supposed to be good or something? Because the Cardinals handled them pretty easily on Friday night. We'll talk about the matchup. Sonny Gray, brilliant, as the Cardinals shut out the Dodgers, plus some great pitching performances throughout the minor league system from some top prospects, too. All coming up on b-schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. Early morning hours now of Saturday, June 7th, 2025, after Friday night's St. Louis Cardinals win over the Los Angeles Dodgers at Busch Stadium. A 5-0 shutout as Sonny Gray does it once again. Really strong against one of the best lineups in baseball, going 6 1/3 innings. That's right, he pitched into the 7th. He scattered a bunch of hits, gave up 8 hits to the Dodgers in this one, but not really any dangerous ones. Just a couple of extra base hits tonight for that Dodger lineup against Sonny Gray. 6 singles, 2 doubles allowed by Gray, and scattered them all. No runs, no walks, more importantly. Like, if you're going to give up 8 hits over 6 1/3, you better not walk anybody, and Sonny didn't, and that made it so he was able to get around some of the traffic on the base paths. 3.35. By the way, now the ERA for Sonny Gray, that's best in the Cardinals rotation after recent developments for Matthew Liberatore. Sonny Gray back on top, and should we even be surprised? I mean, Sonny Gray rising to the occasion in a tough home game. That's really where he's done his best work since joining the St. Louis Cardinals, and despite being out hit tonight 10-7, the Cardinals win it 5-0. You get offensive contributions from a number of sources tonight. Pedro Pages got the scoring going for the Cardinals with a big 2-run home run in that second inning. How about the 5th inning? What in the world was going on with Dodgers starter Justin Wrobleski in that 5th inning? He had absolutely no command of his pitches, and I was frankly surprised that the Cardinals kept swinging at some of those pitches that were out of the strike zone when it just seemed abundantly clear that he was going to have a very difficult time putting 3 in a row in the strike zone to get anybody out. And maybe I was more surprised that Dave Roberts didn't do something about it a little bit sooner. He ended up pitching through that 5th inning and actually throwing a clean 6th. But the wheels were coming off quickly, and it was Brendan Donovan staying patient, waiting for a good pitch to hit. It felt like Wrobleski just had to serve one right over the middle, and Donovan was able to plunk that thing into center field for some insurance, make it 4-0. And then Willson Contreras adding a home run in the bottom of the 8th inning. That was nice to see. That's his 7th of the season. For Pages, it was his 5th, by the way. It's a pretty good home run total for Pedro Pages. I wonder if he'll end up maybe in that 12 to 15 range at the end of the season. Really good offensive production tonight from the Cardinals. Got it done in multiple innings from multiple sources in the lineup. Not overly successful in this game. Only the 7 hits, but you draw 3 walks. They were patient. They picked their spots, and ultimately they proved to have a lineup 1 through 9 able to get the job done against the Dodgers starter who, look, Wrobleski wouldn't have been probably somebody that the Dodgers would have pegged for their rotation at the beginning of the season if they were at full strength, but they're very clearly not right now. And so the Cardinals, all they can do is take advantage of it, improving to 35-28 on the season. Tonight on b-schaeff Daily, we'll get into some other main topics to discuss from that Cardinals win, including just the recency of Sonny Gray being totally dialed in. We'll talk about the Tommy Edman reception at Busch Stadium and also get a look at his numbers and just see what kind of player has he actually been since joining the Dodgers? Because I know that we have the narrative in our head about how the Cardinals, the one that got away and can't believe they traded him. And I think he's almost kind of been the hitting version of what Eric Fedde has been in the rotation, which is basically what the Cardinals planned for that trade to be in the end. Got some really good defensive contributions tonight as well. Mason Wynn we'll talk about. Nolan Arenado, again, we'll talk about the image of him sliding toward the dugout railing. That got Sonny Gray out of a key spot with runners on 1st and 3rd and a couple outs. So really good to see there. And Steven Matz, he's starting to look like he's turned the corner potentially from where we had seen him previously. Bullpen was pretty solid tonight. We'll talk about those things. And we'll go down on the farm, talk about a couple of pitching prospects that had huge nights down in Springfield and Memphis, respectively. Before we go any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you enjoy daily St. Louis Cardinals content. That's the podcast that I do, b-schaeff Daily, talking Cardinals every day. And you can also subscribe to the podcast by following on Spotify. Just search b-schaeff Daily. All right, let's get into it. How about those Cardinals? I mean, we saw them lose 2 consecutive series. They didn't score against the Rangers over the previous weekend. You face the Royals. It's a weird, disjointed series because of the rainout, the doubleheader. You drop 2 of 3 in both of those series. It's the first time the Cardinals had lost consecutive series in quite a while. They had been rolling along for the most part. The month of May, very kind to the Cardinals, but things turning to June, they've run into a little bit of trouble. Against the Royals, they weren't really able to pitch. Against the Rangers, they weren't really able to pitch in 2 of the 3 games, and they couldn't really hit for much in any of those contests down in Arlington. But one thing that happened down in Arlington that continued tonight was Sonny Gray finding his resurgence at this point in the season. He came into that start in Texas with an ERA above 4. And as he leaves Busch Stadium tonight, the ERA down to 3.35. He's been really good. Yes, he has been ace-like. I do not subscribe to the theory of my STL Sports Central co-host, Randy Carricker, that he is not an ace of staff. I do believe Sonny Gray to be an ace. By the way, just a quick housekeeping note. If you remember it as Sports Hub STL, that I'm doing a lot of shows and writing for, they're changing the name. It's STL Sports Central at this point. That is what it is. Moving forward, nothing else is going to change about the content. But STL Sports Central, the name to know and love when it comes to where I'll be doing my writing, where I'll be doing a lot of post-game shows. So just wanted to mention that for anybody who may have been confused. Sports of STL, now STL Sports Central. Really nothing else about it is going to change. So there's your update on that front. But no, I'm not on Randy's side with that argument. Randy makes a lot of good arguments. That's not one that I subscribe to. I think Sonny Gray is absolutely worth what the Cardinals are paying him. You get the bang for the buck with Sonny. Look, you have to sometimes when you're in free agency and there's an ace out there and you haven't been able to develop one as an organization for some time, yeah, you might have to overpay. Fortunately, the Cardinals seem to line up with Sonny Gray because he's from the Tennessee area, close enough to St. Louis where that was maybe an attractive factor for him signing with the Cardinals, and they were able to compel him to get here on a 3-year contract. And look, in year 1, his ERA was 3.84. It was a little bit elevated, obviously, compared to when he was a Cy Young candidate the season before that, and you're always going to pay that sticker price when a guy is coming off of a career year. But I would say throwing for 203 strikeouts last year in 166 innings, and now being a guy who's got 81 strikeouts and about 75 innings for the Cardinals, and we're not even quite to the halfway point of the season for another 3 or 4 weeks. Sonny Gray has done everything you could hope to see him do, and really tone setter for a series this weekend that you'd love to get if you're the Cardinals. And now you're in the driver's seat to be able to do so because of his contributions and what we talked about, the lineup and the defense pitch again to do as well. It's going to be difficult. Yamamoto is a very tough customer, and that's who the Cardinals will face on Saturday afternoon with Eric Fedde on the mound. And I just frankly believe Eric Fedde to be a pretty bad matchup against these Dodgers just because he's walked so many guys this year, has not been able to keep that under wraps, and at times it's come back to bite him. And it feels like in an outing like tomorrow, if you're walking guys in this Dodger lineup, the ones you don't walk certainly are more than capable of coming back to bite you, and when they do, more guys on base means more runs coming across home plate. So in theory, you want to keep Eric Fedde in the strike zone tomorrow and try to limit those walks, but the more batted balls the Dodgers hit, the more likely they are to score some runs. So it's kind of a catch-22 for Fedde tomorrow. I would probably, if you asked me to predict it, which I did on KTGR on Friday afternoon, I said I think the Cardinals probably win only 1 out of the 3 games this weekend, but I did think tonight was their best chance to do it. And if you want to get a series win, certainly you had to start with this one because of the way the pitching maybe lines up in not such a favorable way for the Cardinals on Saturday. And then we're waiting to see for Sunday. I expect Michael McGreevy probably to be the starter. You could start Palante on regular rest if you wanted to, but I think Palante of the two would be the guy that you'd want to give that extra day to, given he has not looked as strong recently. McGreevy, we haven't seen in the big leagues recently, but certainly in AAA he's done his job and is well rested enough after just throwing 75 pitches on Tuesday to conceivably get that nod on Sunday afternoon. I don't believe the Cardinals have announced anything. It really seems that all signs are pointing to that, though, as of Friday. So we'll see what ends up happening and probably get that under wraps. If it's not already been revealed and I just happen to miss it in the reporting, I imagine by Saturday we'll get maybe some confirmation of that, and maybe not. Maybe we'll take it into Sunday morning, but that's still what I expect to happen. When you look at what Palante has been recently, it would just make more sense to let him have that extra day because maybe he can gain some utility from it. It does seem that Matthew Liberatore hopefully avoided a disastrous outcome with the reasoning he was taken out of the game on Thursday, just fatigue. And that's what they said it was at the time. And reports that I saw from Busch earlier on Friday indicate that it's fine. And hopefully, an extra day of rest maybe would be good for him as well. You figure when it's McGreevy going on Sunday, that would leave Palante for Monday. And then since Michaelis and Liberatore pitched on the same day in that doubleheader on Thursday, certainly could have Michaelis slotting ahead of Liberatore once again, which would put Michaelis in range to go on Tuesday if Palante was Monday. So Libby, as of Wednesday, I believe would be the next time he would be needed. And that would line up to give him 5 days of rest if my math is correct instead of 4. So he would be getting the benefit of that extra day as well. That's what I think the Cardinals will do. Obviously, if we find out what the real answer is going to be and this is wrong, just ignore it, delete this part of the podcast, and we'll pretend that it never even happened. So that's kind of my thought and the breakdown of the series. Cardinals maybe benefit from the switching of Sunday's pitchers that the Dodgers did. I saw Jeff Jones report it earlier this afternoon that the Dodgers, instead of going with Dustin May as had been anticipated, they'll push him to Monday, and Clayton Kershaw will be getting the ball for the Dodgers on Sunday at Busch Stadium, which, if you look at his recent numbers, I know the name probably strikes some fear into the hearts, especially now that Matt Carpenter is retired, but his numbers haven't been very good. Clayton Kershaw has struggled to walk guys. He hasn't really had the strikeout stuff, and the ERA, I believe, is like up in the 7 range. So maybe the Cardinals, after eventually getting to the lefty Wrobleski tonight, we're seeing them do a little bit more against lefties recently. Did okay against Reagans. Wrobleski, they're able to get to him, and then maybe Kershaw will be the guy the Cardinals can go after and get on Sunday. So just something to keep in mind, the report that I saw from Jeff Jones of the Belleville News-Democrat on that. Do you fear Clayton Kershaw, Cardinals fans, or would you rather see him over Dustin May, who certainly does have some swing and miss going, ERA in the 4s or so this year for May, but obviously a former top prospect. So that's what's going on. I think the Cardinals are in a position now to win this series. Saturday, man, if you get Saturday, you'll be riding high because that just on paper looks like a really difficult matchup. In the lineup Saturday probably will be once again Tommy Edman, who was batting down in the lineup tonight for the Dodgers. But boy, did he ever get a nice reception from the Cardinals fans at Busch Stadium and donned the helmet, kind of gave a tip of his cap and made sure to kind of circle around to give the recognition to all the Cardinals fans who are recognizing him. That was certainly good to see, and I think folks in St. Louis obviously still very fond of Tommy Edman after all the contributions that he made during his time with the Cardinals. But I did want to point something out. And Tommy Edman didn't really do anything of note tonight. I think he had one base hit, but it was just a single. I would be shocked if he leaves St. Louis without at least one double so we could talk about Tommy Two Bags. But he was with the Cardinals for 5 years and racked up, a pretty significant amount of data on, what kind of player he is and was during that time. 2,425 plate appearances in the regular season with the Cardinals for Tommy Edman. He had a 726 OPS over that stretch, which equated to a league average 100 OPS plus for his time with the Cardinals. With the Dodgers the last couple of years, and again, these are just regular season numbers. We know that he did some really cool things in October, and I think that's kind of like the Randy Arozarena tale where guy leaves, he wins an LCS MVP. Suddenly, you're like, oh, man, he's the one that got away. But in Edman's case, with the Dodgers coming into today, 731, his OPS with the Dodgers. Remember, with the Cardinals, it was 726. Basically been the same player with the Dodgers that he was with the Cardinals, which is a nice player. Absolutely. I think a little bit of the difference has been he's shown a little bit more pop with the Dodgers, a 444 slug compared to a 408 slug when he was with St. Louis. Batting average is actually 25 points lower than when he was with the Cardinals. 240 hitter, was a 265 hitter with the Cardinals over his 5 years. On base is actually down quite a bit compared to when he was with the Cardinals. 319 with St. Louis, 287 OBP in 331 Dodger plate appearances, again, during the regular season coming into Friday night. So as much as I think Tommy Edman is a winning player, and I will always root for him and hope to see him do well, I honestly don't think you can look at that, the way that a lot of Cardinals fans look at that Fetty trade and say, oh my gosh, they bungled it. A guy who's, 731 OPS. Again, the postseason factor is one you can't take away, but guess what? Cardinals weren't in the postseason last year. So if Tommy Edman had stayed, that never would have materialized. We never would have seen that from him because he wouldn't have been in the playoffs. Wouldn't have been an opportunity that he was afforded. right? What's so very interesting is there is a stat for pitchers, too, that basically does what OPS plus does and equates it to a 100 being league average scale. With the Dodgers, Edman's been a 105 OPS plus, right? 5% above league average. Good player, solid player, really good defender. So that's something that you can't take away from Tommy Edman in the context of this conversation. He's 1.4 wins above replacement this year, according to Baseball Reference, and I think defense is a good part of that and reason for that. But I just want to mention, Eric Fetty doesn't maybe get a fair shake a lot of times in the way that we talk about him. In fact, the last game that he had, I think he threw a quality start or something close to it, and I came on here and I said, man, it's kind of hard to watch. That's kind of the way that we view Fetty at times for whatever reason. But in the name of fairness, I would like to just acknowledge, since joining the Cardinals, he is a 109 OPS plus, 109 ERA plus, which is the equivalent for pitchers of OPS plus, basically what that serves to be for hitters. Compares you to league average. So he's been 9% above league average as a starting pitcher, while Tommy Edman's been 5% above league average as a position player offensively. Granted, you add in the defense, that probably gives Edman a bump. You could say that Edman is, and again, I'm taking postseason out of this because the Cardinals didn't make it. So had he been here, it would have been a complete non-factor. The fact that he got to do it with the Dodgers and make a name for himself off of that postseason is awesome because Tommy Edman's a great dude, and nobody deserves the success and the little bit of notoriety that he gained from that like he does. But I just want to mention, the Cardinals knew they needed an arm for that rotation. And you might say, no, they could have had McGreevy. I'm telling you, what the Cardinals have done through the first 2 months plus of the season, to have no starting pitchers get injured at the big league level is unheard of. It hasn't happened for this franchise in a decade, since 2015, that they've gotten this deep into the season. And actually, I'd have to go back into 2015 to even know if that's true, but I think it was because they basically had 4 guys make 30-plus starts and another guy make 20-some-odd starts. So they have not seen this level of health for their rotation since 10, 11 years ago, essentially. So it's not something you could have anticipated. What they did anticipate was losing Gibson, losing Lynn in free agency because they weren't going to pay those guys. And look, both of them are kind of out of baseball right now. That is what it is. Gibby did, I think, latch on somewhere else in the minors. I think with the Rangers. Is that where he landed? No, I got to check that. With the Rays. Tampa Bay Rays organization, they sent him to AAA. But that being what it is, the Cardinals lost those 2 main contributors from last year's rotation, let him go in free agency, replaced with internal options. You're getting Eric Fetty because if you hadn't, you'd basically be having McGreevy in the rotation to begin the year, and then when a guy like Libby, and look, you would have had Matz too, so that's fair. Maybe he would have been in the rotation. How valuable, though, has he been in the bullpen? It's working out. I was a skeptic of that, not because I didn't think Matz could do a decent job out there, but because I thought, man, he deserves the role as a starter, especially going into free agency after the year. To be a consummate teammate and just say, yeah, I'll do what you need out of me is great. You love having those guys around, but I thought for Matz's sake, probably should get a chance to start with the way that he had performed and earned it. But my point with all of this is to say, John Mozeliak anticipated we need a cost-controlled starter because you want to go into spring training and suddenly you don't have enough. And Eric Fetty was basically the Tommy Edman of the pitching world in terms of contract status, and that's something that they didn't have. They didn't have an Eric Fetty for this year. What they did have is guys like Brendan Donovan. They thought Nolan Gorman, Thomas Saggese on the way. They felt like they could withstand it, right? Victor Scott coming for center field. So they felt like they had enough. And I'm not saying it was just a slam dunk of a trade, but I will look at it and say, probably didn't get crushed in the deal as badly as I think a lot of Cardinals fans feel. If it's because Tommy Edman is just such a likable player, that's totally fine to feel like you wish they didn't trade him. That's what fandom is about. I wish they didn't trade him. I would love to see Tommy Edman still getting the job done for the Cardinals. But business is business, and it went the way that it went. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about Tommy getting a great, deserved reception from Cards fans at Busch. By the way, 40,000, the announced attendance. It's about maybe the best crowd of the year other than opening day. Trying to rack the memory bank, but that's a good one. And, of course, Shohei in town, you figured this would be a well-received game, even with a rain delay. They ended up having a pretty nice crowd at Busch, so that's good to see. But that's my thoughts on Tommy Edman. Love the guy, but, did they actually get crushed in the trade as much as it's kind of portrayed that they did? I don't know. Mentioning a couple of really good defensive plays, we talked about Arenado making the sliding catch. Mason Wynn had a double play turn, I believe, that ended the 7th inning. where it was kind of not a slow feed from the second baseman, but it was just the pace of it was like, if this is going to be a double play, he's going to have to rifle that sucker. And Mason Wynn, let me tell you, he rifled that sucker. So that was really cool to see. Not many shortstops, if any other, than Mason Wynn would make that play, and he's got a rocket launcher attached to his shoulder. We know that by now. Cool to see that kind of play from Mason. Great to see Arenado with the sliding catch going toward the dugout railing. Made the joke that, hey, I think you got to make that dugout railing gold now. And really cool what the Cardinals were doing, by the way. They painted the seat gold. It's not going to stay that way permanently. They had an auction tonight during the game for tornado relief, as you saw if you watched the broadcast on FanDuel or on Channel 4 in St. Louis. And I believe like a bunch of signed items from players and like stuff from Patrick Mahomes and all Bobby Witt donating some items. So a big auction for tornado relief in St. Louis. The gold Arenado seat that he's going to sign was a part of that. I just think that's really cool that the Cardinals, made something like that happen. You didn't have to do that. And it was a good idea by Derek Gould. He tweeted it out, and that kind of jogged the memory banks, I think, for the Cardinals to go, hey, why wouldn't we do something like that? Let's get the creative juices flowing. And they did, and they turned it into a win for the community as well. So credit to the Cardinals. Like, those are the types of things that are easy wins to do, but you have to take the step and actually do it, rather than just kind of say, we don't need to mess with that. Is that too cutesy? Is that too what? No, it was great. It was fun, and then it goes to a good cause at the end. That's a win-win-win. So credit to the Cardinals for doing that. One more thing I wanted to mention. Well, two more things. Willson Contreras continuing to slug. Really good to see him. And, man, when he goes, the Cardinals go. And that was his only hit tonight, but that's great to see. OPS up to now 729, batting .250 on the season, and whacking that seventh home run. Good to see from Willson. He was the heart and soul of the team during the doubleheader on Thursday. And, man, if he goes on a hot streak, look out, because that's just another guy in the lineup that just hasn't been quite consistent recently. And, man, if he turns it back on, which I believe he's going to, it's just another power source in your lineup. Arenado, by the way, 3 for 4. Didn't necessarily have the same types of power swings. It was 3 singles for him, but good to see that from Arenado, who is pushing his way back toward 900 on the OPS. He's up to 690, so great to see there. I guess I'll talk a little bit, too, about Ryan Vilade before I get into Down on the Farm. Yeah, I'm with you. He doesn't need to be starting, even if it's against lefties at this point. Like, I don't know what the Cardinals are trying to prove. I think it started out as like, hey, look, this is a better matchup. This is a guy that had an 850 OPS in AAA, so he was performing. He's here replacing Jordan Walker because Walker was a right-handed hitting outfielder. Vilade, right-handed hitting outfielder, bring him up, right? Makes all the sense in the world. But then, like, you get into this stretch where you're facing a crap ton of lefties, and so you're compelled to not put Burleson and Gorman in the lineup. Throw Burleson out there would be my preference at this point. Like, we've seen enough of Ryan Vilade. He hasn't gotten a hit. I don't know what they're trying to prove. Like I said, I get it, the matchup on paper, but like, take a step back and ask yourself if you're maybe doing a little bit too much when it comes to the handedness stuff. That's where I'm at. I can explain why the Cardinals did it and why they're doing it while also disagreeing with it. This is a perfect opportunity to see if Burleson can be a guy. Like, what does he do against lefties? I get it. Maybe defensively, Vilade is an upgrade over Burleson. I'm sure he is. Good athlete, Vilade, but my thought would be, and they don't. I mean, that's another signal that they do not believe in Burleson as an outfielder defensively. Again, trust people when they tell you what they think. Like, their actions will tell you what they believe about certain guys. Pedro Pages catches all the time. They think he's their best catcher. They reluctantly put Burleson in even when there's opportunities to do so because they're not really sure about his defense. That's probably the way they actually feel. There's no, like, subliminal messaging. It's probably just the way that they feel. And I'm not saying they're wrong about that. He's, not great range out there. He's working hard at it, but there are limitations. So part of that is you're against the Dodgers. You probably don't want to give out away any outs, certainly with a lineup that can hit a lot of balls into gaps and into the outfield. So that might be part of the thinking as well. If that's the way you feel about it, though, and look, people have suggested this to me, and I said, well, here's why they didn't do this. Here's why they didn't bring up Michael Ciani. Right-handed hitter. Jordan Walker was right-handed hitter. They want to replace like for like. And normally that position's not going to play very much. That's why it's not Sajaci that came up and moving Donovan to the outfield to play a corner or Newpart plays the other corner. And you could play Sajaci, 4 out of 5 days, basically, especially now with Clayton Kershaw pitching on Sunday. This could have been runtime for Sajaci. If they're going to play the righty anyway, why not be somebody that you want to play? I guess they want to get a look at Vilade. Probably, I would argue his 40-man spot is up for grabs if this little experiment doesn't pan out. Like, this was a chance to see some runway with him, and I know this was not a Ryan Vilade runway season, so it's probably frustrating to hear that. But a lot of times we see this, where it's guys like, all right, they're a quad A player. We're not really sure what their long-term fit is, and we're the Cardinals. We just called up Nathan Church. Like, you have to think the business side of this. Nathan Church is taking an outfield spot every day after getting called up from AA to AAA. Whose spot's he taking? Well, Vilade's not there, so it's easy to find a way for Church to play. If Vilade were to be sent back down, guess who's going to be prioritized for playing time? Not Vilade. It's going to be Church. Is that fair? Not really. I mean, Vilade had an 850 OPS at AAA. He certainly seems to be a capable player, and your organization is better to have more capable players than not, but here he is getting some major league runway in what should be some favorable circumstances, facing left-handed pitching, so from a platoon advantage, he's getting that, and was over 3 tonight with a couple of strikeouts. Again, super small sample, but guess what? The guys that are non-prospects, that are kind of those journeyman players like Vilade, don't usually get large samples to prove themselves. They've got to show something, or it might be the end of the line. So could it be a situation where Vilade is maybe passed through waivers at some point because the Cardinals are trying to use that 40-man spot for other purposes, like an Andre Granillo, getting a look at him in the bullpen? Certainly a possibility there. You do have Koperniak on the 40-man as well, and his season has been a struggle. Might have made more sense for the Cardinals to bring him up because you wouldn't have had to spend the additional 40-man spot, but he didn't really earn the opportunity. If this is going to be an organization where, you're telling those guys in the minors, hey, perform and you'll get a shot, does that look like a very believable claim if you're not calling up a guy like Vilade when he performs, but you call up Koperniak, who's had a really bad year offensively in AAA? So those are some of the things that I think are factors. Sajaci would have been an interesting call, even if it was just for a handful of days, because he could have played 4 out of those 5 days. But did the Cardinals know exactly who the lefties were going to be coming up at the time? The Dodgers have been moving around their rotation. The Royals, they didn't really know for sure that Reagans was going to be back. So I don't totally blame the Cardinals for not knowing. If they did or didn't know that there were going to be all these lefties coming up in a row, it's just sort of the nature of the beast. But I just wanted to address this topic because a lot of people are going, what the hell? Who's Vilade? Why is he there? That's my thought on it. It's just kind of a weird oddity of the schedule that they're facing so many lefties. Yes, could you throw Barrero into the outfield in one of those games? Why does it have to keep being Vilade? Again, I guess they probably want to get a look at him because his 40-man spot could be on the chopping block, and sometimes that cup of coffee is what you need. And if it clicks in a cup of coffee, you go, okay, this guy's got it. And if he doesn't, maybe he doesn't. And then you say, okay, that 40-man spot, if we have to give it up, it's expendable. You never hope somebody's claimed on waivers in those spots. You always probably want to retain him in the organization, but at least, you got a chance to see it. And runway is going to be shorter for some than others. I would say Barrero's runway, yes, Barrero's fit on the roster is kind of nil, but he's athletic enough to be able to fill in at multiple positions defensively. Not a trusted option right now, and really not even necessarily to pinch run, clearly based on Pozo running the other day in game 1 in extra innings for himself. So kind of a lot of thoughts going around there. I don't think any of this is too serious as a topic. We're talking about bench stuff, right? And for now, Vilade, technically not just a bench guy when they're playing against all these lefties, but I don't think it's the end of the world. But yes, I've seen probably enough of that. Not saying he's a terrible player or that he wouldn't be able to run into a good day offensively, but I think it's trying a little bit too hard with forcing the Vilade thing 3 days in a row. Let it be a lefty on lefty. Let it be a lefty on lefty for Gorman. I'm not really advocating for that because I think we know what that looks like. But Burleson maybe has a little bit more that I would like to see in terms of what that looks like. But apparently Ollie, for probably good reason, not wanting to sacrifice defense, which Burley in the outfield would be. Gorman at second base with Donnie in the outfield would be a slightly lesser defense, in my opinion, than the one that they put out there tonight because Donnie is a better second baseman, as I see it. So that's my rant on that. You can take it or leave it. You can let me know in the comments what you think. Again, I don't think this is like a life or death conversation, but it is one worth having because I know a lot of Cardinals fans were curious, and most people had not heard the name Ryan Vilade at all before this week. So felt like I should do my little Ryan Vilade PSA. Now that that's out of the way, I meant to talk a little bit more about Steven Matz, but I've already gone 30 minutes. Steven Matz, good again. 2 strikeouts in the 9th inning. Good to see from him. But let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about the minors, because when it comes to pitching, there were some very good performances on Friday down on the farm. It's time to go down on the farm. Brought to you by Hastings Layers Premium Eggs.
You'll be happier than a jackass eating thistle.
Huh? All right, we'll start at AA and work our way up as Eshawn Henderson looked really good for the Springfield Cardinals on Friday night against the Frisco Rough Riders, although this was actually a game that the Cardinals needed a ninth-inning run to secure the victory because a couple of runs were coughed up in the eighth inning by the bullpen. But Eshawn Henderson, 5 2/3 innings, gave up just 4 hits and 1 unearned run. No earned runs in the game. 9 strikeouts definitely jump off the page for Eshawn Henderson. 2.03 ERA in Springfield. I certainly think he would have a line to potentially getting to Memphis very soon. We talked about Tekoa Roby a couple of days ago, 6 2/3 scoreless. He has a line to get to AAA very soon. Roby actually was named minor league pitcher of the month, and Rainiel Rodriguez, minor league hitter of the month in the Cardinals organization for the month of May. There was a Zoom call on Friday morning with Tekoa Roby where it was interesting to hear some perspectives from him on his season. But I'll be curious to see how the Cardinals want to manage that because they've got some guys in AAA in that rotation that are just kind of floundering, 9 ERA type of stuff. Not future prospects, just kind of bodies right now that are filling out innings for them. And I think there's enough guys at AA that you might start to matriculate some of those fellas northward. We'll see if that ends up being the way the Cardinals want to go about it. Having that conversation about some of the young pitching prospects in the org made me recall that we did see Tink Hence go on a rehab, and I was kind of wondering what ended up happening to Tink Hence. A little bit curious. June 2nd, he pitched an inning. It was a scoreless inning, but that seems a little bit strange. There's no pitch count on MILB.com, so I don't know offhand. Why did he gear back would be my question. He threw 2 1/3 on May 27th and then only 1 inning on June 2nd. So we'll see. It would have been probably another turn for Tink Hence to throw again today, I would guess, but he went from Palm Beach down to the Florida Coast League, I believe. So that would have been a bit of a step backward, but it also might have just been related to what team was home and available to be pitching in the ballpark. I'm checking just as I do this to see if there's been anything new on Tink in the last few days on maybe why he only threw an inning on the 2nd of June. But the most recent things I see from him are baseball cards that people are posting. Oh, look, there's a Tink autograph for $5. That's not a bad deal. Anyway, not 100% sure what's going on right now with Tink Hence, if he's going to be making his way back to the level he was destined to be in, which I think would be AAA before too long. But Eshawn Henderson certainly could be a name that we could see on the rise. Another name that's obviously been on the rise, he did a lot of his rising last year in his first professional season with the Cardinals organization. Quinn Matthews has returned to AAA and just turned in what was arguably the best performance that we've seen from him at this AAA level. 4-1, the Memphis Redbirds took down the Indianapolis Indians on Friday night, and your starter was Quinn Matthews, and he was really good. 1 unearned run allowed, no earnies, no walks on 5 hits, 5 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts for Quinn Matthews, who lowers the AAA ERA to 4.50, and Gordon Graceffo had 2 2/3 scoreless innings of relief, as he did allow a couple of walks and 3 hits, but scattered them to be scoreless. And Chris Roycroft came on for the save, a 4-out save for him, a couple of strikeouts. Good to see Roycroft getting a nice outing in. But man, Quinn Matthews continuing to make his rise, now back to health, it would appear, and looking as sharp as the Memphis Redbirds have really ever seen him. Remember last year when he was called up to Memphis toward the end of the year, didn't perform overly effectively, and early this season had a little bit of a bump, but looking good in this one to lower that ERA to 4.5. The Memphis Redbirds, as I mentioned, did get the win. Does not look like we saw Siani in that lineup for whatever that's worth. Probably just a standard day off. Nathan Church goes 1 for 4, still hitting .364 with that club. Sajasi was 0 for, but did have a walk. Jimmy Crooks, 2 for 4. No homers from the lineup tonight, but you did get a double from Crooks, his 8th of the year. Mainly, though, Quinn Matthews. You're excited about what he is doing on the mound. Him and Eshawn Henderson, Tekoa Roby, lots of excitement with the Cardinals pitching prospects on the way. That, though, is going to do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening. Make sure to check out the YouTube membership subscription in the video description if you're interested and lending your support to this independent podcast channel covering all things St. Louis Cardinals. Appreciate you guys again, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.